We don't know, like I said, I don't know if it's a pastry. I don't know if it's quite, because I thought it was a breadstick, but to be honest, it looks like some sort of pastry or... You're having more to figure out what it is. Yeah. This is the good bacteria. That's like what's back in the bag.
Oh. Are you eating those and putting it back in the bag?
Hold on a second.
Oh my gosh. What are you doing?
You wanna...
Why do you have
there might be a breadstick.
What is happening?
Where did you get it? They all want breadsticks.
Why do they have breadsticks?
Why are they called?
Well, I just saw a Ziploc bag in the kitchen, and I don't know what these are, but I'm glad you like them.
We're trying to film a podcast.
Yeah, I know.
Well, what are you doing here?
You might stop by, and then we'd be hungry. You've been in here for a while.
Actually, I appreciate it.
Don't eat with your mouth closed. No.
Don't.
Well,
Sit down.
just like,
Sit down. Enough of you.
put these,
What's that?
Didn't you just say don't eat with your mouth?
yeah, it's a new expression. It's a Jersey thing.
Hey everybody, welcome to Down by the River. We got another special guest, and when I say another, it's the same guy that we had on a couple weeks ago. I don't know how he keeps getting on here, but my name is Andrew Vardabedian. This is
Father Kuhn.
and we have
Andrew Vardabedian.
say that again.
Vardabedian.
Okay.
One more time for the people in the back.
Vardabedian.
I think we got it this time. Vardabedian. All
Yeah,
right,
Vardabedian.
Well, hey, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks
I mean,
for having
it was
me.
very gracious of you to also bring a snack up for us.
Yeah. There's a bag of breadsticks I found lying around the kitchen. And I thought, you guys are pretty hungry. I've been on all morning. It's a strange breadstick though because it's a little sweet. It's a hint of sweetness. Yeah.
Little hint, just like Father Nate over here.
Yeah, just a hint.
Just a hint.
Just a hint of niceness and sweetness.
Just enough.
Yeah.
On certain days of the week.
Certain
times.
Certain days in the week, So, but no, yeah, I thought I'd bring it by. Thought you guys would like it. I don't know who brought it or where it came from. Its origin.
I guess we don't. And I already took a bite out of it. So,
Yeah,
me too.
honey,
Yeah.
if I don't make it home tonight, I apologize.
Yeah.
But you can blame him. And for anybody that's watching this, we now have motive and murder.
Yeah.
So you have no alibi. You're literally on camera.
Yeah. Well, I do have a bit of an alibi because 2 out of the 3 guys in there that you asked just were like, "No, I'm not going on here."
That's
So you
true.
told them ahead of time
I
that
told them ahead of
you
time.
had poisoned the breadsticks.
No, I didn't poison anybody.
Oh,
That's
okay,
my
okay.
story.
No, you didn't poison
sticking
anybody. You
to it.
poisoned the breadsticks.
Well, I mean, you're using poison, a very general term. I mean,
That's-
there's not.
I didn't know there was too many terms, ways in which you use poison.
Yeah,
other than,
don't eat with your mouth full.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's okay.
That's the other thing.
That's-
When you said that, when you don't eat with your mouth full, like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm trying to think. How then does a person eat if not with their mouth full of food?
Yeah.
Half full? Is half full okay?
Half full? IV?
Well, you know how you shouldn't eat on one side of your mouth all the time.
No.
It's not good for your molars.
Okay.
Just on that side?
Yeah, just on this side.
Never met a person that did that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, because then you wear down your molars awfully fast. I mean, I'm a little concerned what your molars are the state they're in these days. But
okay. That's a good PSA.
yeah, I mean, you
Make
drink
sure you-
enough milk, you should be fine.
It's true.
But everything's connected to the heart, the gums, gum health.
Also, what kind of mug is this? You made fun of my mug the last time you were on here. I got my spirit mug.
Yeah.
Father has his formation mug, and you got
right.
a...
This is Tiffany crystal, and I got it as a kind of a gift from when I was coming to Wisconsin.
What a guy.
Oh,
I mean, we only have the finest here for especially our guests.
Yeah.
And our returning guests.
Yeah.
Since you apparently are one.
And you just
Yeah.
Against our better judgment.
I guess so. Yeah. I was just default today
Yeah.
because
This is what happens. You ask a bunch of guys. We have 9 guys in the house. You ask a bunch of guys. And they're all excited when we talk about the podcast. And then as soon as it comes all right, you're on. And then they see these lights. And they see these producers. And they see all these wires. And they just go, I can't do it.
yeah.
It's
it's kind of sad actually.
yeah. So this is why we have you.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I really just came for the breadsticks.
You just
and
happened to
water.
be here, had
I
some
just
breadsticks. You were looking
whatever
out for
we
us.
have established, their breadsticks, right?
Yeah.
Came for the breadsticks, stayed for the fun.
Yeah,
We get
yeah.
it. We get it. Yeah. That's fine. So, hey, you know what? I think we told the people. So, like, for one of the things in the house, you get to go on parish weekends. And somehow, against my better judgment, you got assigned to my old parishes where I grew up, spent most of my time. All my cousins and family members live there still in Cashton.
Yeah.
How I want just for the people at home, I want to hear a Jersey look at St. Mary's Ridge, Cashton, the tri-parishes, once known as the quad parishes.
Yeah. I would summarize it in one story. My first night at the rectory there, I was sleeping, and it was, oh my goodness, maybe it had to be 11 p.m. or so, and I just hear screaming, just oh, that sort of thing. And
Shout out to Father
I woke
Bovey.
up, I'm like, I threw holy water on my bed, so there's no way something's in here. And I'm like, or if that's Father Bovey, I'm concerned.
That would be concerning, yes.
And then I found out that we have cows. Like, I'm surrounded by cows.
This room?
No. Around the house. There's a farm across the street. There's a farm back of me. There's a farm left of me. There's a farm up above me. There's just farms everywhere. And they're just cows screaming. And I just was saying to myself, like, what is going on? Like, I should not be woken up with terror from a cow, but I didn't know cows scream. So that was my first, like, night in Cashton. But other than that, I have been loving it. It is a culture shock going to the community center. They just had an auction there, and I'm looking at, like, where do they get auction? And there's lumber, hunting, tree stands, tractors, and one person's fighting green tractor, red tractor. And
That's a real thing.
That's big things. How dare you? Like,
I'm not knocking it. I'm just like, I don't know any better.
Did they ask you which side are you on? Green or red?
I said Corvette, and they yelled at me.
oh my gosh, rookie mistake.
Yeah.
How dare you? Everybody knows it's the blue tractors, right? We were the odd family that we had all the blue tractors, the Fords, right? So you're talking about the Internationals and the John Deeres, and the Hemmerspachs were usually the John Deeres.
Yeah.
The Klinkners were usually the International red tractors,
Plymouth.
right?
Pontiac.
Not Plymouth.
Mercury.
The Pontiac Bandit.
We're talking on different levels here.
I actually farm with a Mercury Milan.
Milan.
Yeah.
It's better than a Sable.
I just put a rake behind a Mercury Milan, and I just drive over the land, and I rake the land that way. It's a lot more efficient.
You know what? The way that you're describing this, I can tell that you were a farmer.
Yeah.
That you raked the land with your Tesla.
Well, what happened was, and then I got my cousin Tommy. He takes the Miracle Grow and he just throws it as I'm driving by. Like, you don't need some machinery to do this. You just need like two other hands, and you're just all set.
So you're like traditional practice farmer.
Yeah, but on good days I use typically I use my Volkswagen Jetta.
Wow.
Just to
We've got quite the garage there.
To roll out the hay, feed the pigs.
That makes sense.
You have no idea what you're talking about.
Pigs with.
You have no idea what you're talking about right now.
I know everything about farming. I am more of a farmer than you ever were.
Wow.
Oh,
Those are shots fired.
All right, it's all coming out.
Okay.
It's all coming out.
We're going to come to blows before the end of this podcast if we're not careful.
I don't know anything about
And
farming.
this was our episode of Down by the River. Thank you to Andrew for never coming back.
It just goes to please stand by.
Yeah, please stand by.
It's just a picture of Andrew with the
Just
mug.
hear, what do you say to me?
Yeah.
So, but if we're going to bring this back, Cashton,
Yeah,
parish
sure.
assignments,
Sure,
before we,
sure. It is an amazing experience, and I, in all seriousness, the kindness of the people that I've gone there, because it is scary going to a place like to Cashton. I mean, coming to Wisconsin alone was scary. Then going there was that was frightening to me. It's a whole new environment, a lot different than I'm used to, and the people welcomed me with open arms. I met the most wonderful people there. These parishioners I just sat down with, and they treated me like family. I remember that first night I was at the trivia night, and I was like, I walked in there, I'm like, where am I going to sit? I don't know anybody. And I sat down. They invited me to sit down. We were laughing and joking. It just felt like I was at home. So that's been a great experience. And the pastor there, Father Matthew Bovey, he's been wonderful to me, and can't sing enough praises for being there.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm happy you're there. When we have our family reunion, I'm going to hear all sorts of things about you. Yeah. The last guy that was there that we assigned was John Francis, and he was actually invited to the family reunion. That's how much they loved him there. I'm not saying that you're not there yet because you haven't gotten invited.
You're almost making it out that now I feel really bad.
Yeah,
I'm not even
still
close
got some work
to a
to do.
family.
But it's fine. No, he played a musical instrument though, so that's the
okay.
end with the Brigands in the Ridge.
That's
you gotta play.
That's the Brigand.
You got to play some sort of musical instrument. And so, what's your musical instrument?
You know the.
Nope, you already lost. You took too long.
You know the instrument that you put your hand there. It's like. You know that?
No. It was a great description.
Well,
no.
I was quite the writer in college. You plug it in and you put this little antenna up. You click it on. You put your hand and you just go up and down. It goes.
Yeah, okay.
So.
And
So the answer is no. All right.
I
so,
do play piano and guitar.
oh, all right.
I actually do.
Why didn't you lead off with that?
Well, I just wanted to let you know I'm a man of many talents.
All right.
So,
All right. That's fair.
yeah.
So, all right, this is what we're talking about today. I think that's enough. Are we done with
yeah,
the banter?
I think
we're
that's
done
fine.
with the banter. I
Yeah,
think the people
we better
are-
shut that
the
down
people are
before
good
it
with
gets
that.
Sure.
too out of control.
Because we know that we're going to jump right back into it as soon as we hit another bit. So today, the reason why we brought you back on again, not because everybody else said no, but the main purpose is we're talking about discernment today. All right. So our last podcast, we went through our top 5 saints because we were talking about the draft and for football and things like that. And you played for the Giants at one point, I believe.
Yeah. I was a cornerback for the Giants. Yeah, it was so Elijah. I was able to call him Elijah, Eli, for those at home wondering. He was a nice guy. He bought me Dunkin' Donuts all the time because he was on the commercials a lot back in
sense.
Jersey. All the New Yorkers out there listening know that he was in a lot of Dunkin' Donuts commercials. So he'd buy me a Boston cream donut every Tuesday morning for our practices.
What a guy. What a
Yeah.
guy. So, and if you don't believe that, so the reason why we did our top 5 saints, the draft, we're trying to make it all work together, right? We had our top 5. We don't need to know yours now. Because that for us, we thought it was going to take, 5 minutes and it took us an hour.
What was your top
and
one?
Something. A top one? We could do that. We could do that. My top one, I'll give you a guess.
Pierre
Yeah,
Giorgio
you got it.
Fossati.
Yep. That's
probably
pretty simple. What do you think for him?
Yeah, who do you think mine was?
John Bosco.
Oh, he was number 2.
close.
He was
That's
number
good.
2.
St. Francis.
He was number
That
5.
was number 5. Oh, man,
Okay,
keep going. Keep going.
All right, keep going. John Vianney?
There it is.
Yeah,
John Vianney.
wow.
Yep.
That's really impressive.
Yeah.
You really know him.
Yeah.
That's it.
I couldn't
That's
tell
pretty
you who
good.
yours was going to be. If you're number 1,
My number 1. Wow. That's pretty hard.
you can't say Mary, Jesus, Mary, or Joseph.
Okay.
We made that rule.
I mean, because
last time.
they're top. They're top, obviously.
Wow. That's number 1's really hard because there were so many. But always the consistent, actually, St. Faustina.
Oh, look
that
at
was
this guy.
yeah. She was Divine Mercy was really big in my discernment. So, I would say St. Faustina.
That's great. Well, that's a perfect segue because today what we're talking about is discernment. We
there you
didn't really get into your discernment. We just
Yeah.
talked about what you were dealing with here at the house with us. We didn't actually ask why you came from Jersey to here, other than your bishop telling you to. So today is going to be kind of reminiscing about discernment stories, how we got to where we're at, especially with vocations. Because when we look at when this comes out, right, it's right at like Easter just happened, flowers are blooming, people are thinking about their summer plans, they're thinking about next year, so it's the new possibilities. And this is a time that we see, especially within vocations, kind of an increase or uptick of people reaching out to Father, asking them to come talk to their parishes. We have our Dare to Follow Day coming up in June, that we have young men coming up to stay here at the house, and we host them for a couple of days. So that's really popular. And so all these things, we're like, why don't we talk about discernment? So you're the guest.
do it.
You want to lead off?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's amazing stuff. It is that time of year because it was this time last year that I was actually in the application process starting my application process to be going into my propedeutic year. My discernment is I kind of see I had a reversion. And I had a huge reversion. I mean, confession after 10 years, coming back into the faith, and just a complete 180 in my life, and really got in the faith for the first time in my life in such a intense way, and in a way that I never would have dreamed of. And Jesus did so many great things. I got involved at my parish, reading, working out with different clubs and teams in the parish, and eventually I was also watching Archbishop Fulton Sheen, and I remember him preaching. And I remember him just inside, I felt this feeling of like, that's what I want to do for others. Like this fire inside me, I want to give this to others. So at first it did start almost as, and they talk about that. I know I've seen that other people talk about, sometimes it doesn't start off in the most pure way, where it does sound nice, but maybe it was more selfish. I want to like preach. I want to be this great preacher. And as time goes by, as I'm getting a relationship with the sacraments, I start realizing it was less about the preaching. It was more of realizing what the priesthood actually is. And as months on, that's unfolding. I just have this desire to be in prayer. I worked as a salesman, an account, a fancy word, the account manager, but I worked on a sales team for a company out in New Jersey. And I remember just sitting in the office, and great people, but it just sitting there, I'm just like, I wanted to pray my breviary. I wanted to go to adoration. I want to be in things of Jesus all day. That was like my feeling of just, I was sitting in the office. I'm like, this isn't me. I have no passion, no drive. When I'm at the church, I have passion and drive. I'm getting this feeling. I'm getting this little call. And I'm like, you know what? I might have a call here, maybe. At my parish, we had these little poster boards for a discernment group at Rutgers University. My vocation director of Diocese Metuchen, Father Tom Lanza, his picture was there, and I remember there was a little barcode. I said to myself, I'm like, no, maybe I should. I had my phone up, but I'm like, I don't know. This seems a little scary. Long story short, I scan the barcode. I sign up. I don't hear anything for like a couple weeks, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like there ain't gonna be no group. It's probably just like whatever. Maybe no one signed up.
They just took your information. They're selling it to China.
Yeah, the
You're
Chinese
getting all sorts of spam calls
Chinese
now.
government, the people are U.S. Postal Service is texting me that there's a package missing. They need some information.
I mean, why did you put your social security number in there?
Yeah,
they didn't even ask for it.
Yeah, I know. They said any questions or concerns, and I just put my latest blood test and my social security.
Just quick PSA. Don't ever do that, right?
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Just in case.
Never
anybody,
do that, please. And and long story short, like a day before the sermon group, I get an email. It was like, all right, gentlemen, we'll be meeting tomorrow, this day. And
Perfect.
maybe that doesn't shed the best light on the process. We can cut that out, right? No, but all in all, it was an amazing process because I got there. I think the reason is too, a lot of the guys in Rutgers, they knew each other. Like this is why I didn't know this was going on for a while. This was really something that a lot of the guys that were going to Rutgers, that was in the Catholic Center, this was really built around them. So it was a grace from God that I found my way at this discernment group. I'm at Rutgers, I'm sitting there, and we start off with a holy hour, then we meet together and we talk about some difficult aspects of the priesthood, like things like celibacy. We would have check-ins, like how we're doing. So we built kind of a little bit of a fraternity there, and it ended off with a retreat. So there was a retreat with the Salesian Sisters in Newton, New Jersey. We went out North Jersey, on the west side, where it is like a Cashton. It's very rural. We get this awesome retreat center. The sisters were amazing there, and I left that retreat, and I actually said I'm not going to go. I pulled out of the application process for a little bit. That was part of my discernment process. I just felt a lot of nerves, a lot of other things. That unworthy feeling. I did. We talked about those spiritual traps. I know you've talked about that in formation. I felt that. I just felt, and the enemy really came after me. It's like, you're not worthy, your past sins, you can't do this. You never be worthy to be a priest. And I just said, I can't do this. Out of fear, I just stepped away. I told Father Tom, I said, I'm going to step away. Months go by, and I still have that feeling I want to be a priest, but it's the fear that doesn't want me to go back. Another grace from God moment, another great saint, Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque. I'm reading her autobiography. For some reason, I get this feeling to call Father Tom. Like I forgot what part of the memoir I was reading where it hit me, but I just had this feeling. I was sitting in my car at work. I was eating lunch in my car, and I was like, you know what? Let me call him. I call him up. We have this meeting, and the meeting goes, and it's like, okay, it goes okay. Like, it wasn't like I was still like, I don't know. I'm not sure. He even said, he's like, well, do you want to come back in? He kind of alluded to it, like half joking, half like, maybe we should do this. Because I think he definitely knew how much I wanted to do this. And he talked to me, and I said, no, whatever. I'm like, we'll see what happens. Long story short, I get a call from him, and he says, Andrew, tell me right now, do you want to go to Wisconsin? And I sing praises to Bishop Checchio because this was a couple months after I left the application, and Bishop Checchio said, they had all my stuff, I had a lot of interviews, I got to know some guys, and he said, if you finish your process, finish the due process, psychological exam, all that, do you want to do this? Do you want to go out to Wisconsin? And I said, I joked when I said, I'd go out to California right now. And then he joked, yeah, I would too. I want to go to California. And then, and I was so gracious, and I felt that was such a happy day. I was at work, and I just felt free. I felt this freedom. I felt this passion that was building up for months that I left out of fear. I said, I want to do this. I want to do this. And I entered in, I did the due process. I finished off some interviews, and they accepted me into the program. I came here in September, and yeah, and I'm here. That was kind of I know it was long story short of kind of the discernment, but that's what it was. It was that little snowball of it was becoming part of my life. I realized this wasn't like, hey, I'm going to go to work. Because my mom even said it to me. She's like, why can't you just go to church on Sunday? Like, she didn't mean that in a facetious way, but she saw, like, it became such a passion. She was like, this is really, like, getting to you in, like, this powerful way. Like, what is going on? She was, the parents discern too. It's a discernment for them. This isn't just, I'm going to go and everyone's like, yeah, good for you. It was a discernment for her, so she saw it in me, and yeah, that was kind of the broad picture of what happened.
That's great.
Yeah.
No, Father, what about you? What's your discernment? What did it look like? Because again, you're a priest, so
That's true.
You just always wanted to be a priest, like Andrew here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
always
pretty
wanted
much.
to be a priest, and you just got the collar one day. You found it at JCPenney.
Yep. Put it on, and it's never been the same since.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I don't think we've really touched too much on our vocation stories and shared. For me, the first time that I considered being a priest was I was probably in fourth grade. It was, at that point, beginning to serve at Mass. And, it was that time too where, I don't know if any of you guys did this, maybe not, but we'd play Mass at home. So we would like celebrate Mass at home. And so I come from, a family. I have 3 brothers and 4 sisters, and second oldest. And so I had an older brother and then a younger brother and then my younger sisters. And when we would play Mass at home, I always had to be the priest. I would fight my older brother, sometimes literally, so that I could be the priest. And we'd put on the bathrobes, and we'd take a card table and we'd set it up, and we'd have grape juice and we'd have Nilla wafers, and we would do the whole thing. We'd take the Bible, and that would be for our readings, and then we'd have another Bible, the big family Bible that we'd have on the card table, like the missal, and we just did our thing. We'd sing songs and we'd play Mass at home. As part of it, having been gifted the faith and having been raised in the faith, it was something that was just naturally part of my life. And so that's a huge credit to my parents, for that gift. So by the time I got to fourth grade, I don't know, how old is that? 10?
Yeah.
Ish?
Yeah, that'd be 10.
I wanted to serve. So again, my brother is about a year and a half older than I am. And in our parish, it was tradition that you could begin serving usually in 5th grade. Some parishes have it in 2nd grade after you receive Holy Communion. For whatever reason, our parish was in 5th grade. But I really wanted to serve. And so at one point I had talked to my parents and kind of begged them to let me serve. And I'm like, my brother Ben serves, right? I mean, if he can do it, I can do it. The classic younger brother kind of syndrome where if he's going to do it, I want to do it, and I want to do it better. Not that I did necessarily do it any better, but just that natural competitiveness. And so my parents talked to our pastor, who at the time his name was Father Joe Hensler, and he was an older priest nearing retirement, and he says, sure, he can serve. we'll start them with like funerals and weddings, so kind of off to the side before we jump into serving, parish masses on the weekends to kind of learn. And then usually I would serve with my brother. And so he would kind of help teach me and everything else. Well, that went pretty well. I enjoyed it. Part of it was I enjoyed being active at Mass instead of sitting in the pews where I could sometimes get bored, right? I know sometimes people can relate to that, but I was the same way. So it didn't take very long before I was just put right into the normal schedule and was serving. And as a 10, 11-year-old, the thought of the priesthood wasn't so much an understanding of what the priesthood was, but it was seeing the priest and understanding that there was something significant there. Mm-hmm. And at one point it crossed my mind, maybe I could see myself doing this too, right? Also at that age, as is common knowledge, girls have cooties.
True. True.
It's a fact of life.
There's a cooties pandemic.
So it just happens. At some point you realize that they're there. You can never really, Anyway, so the thought of, getting married at that point, much less having a girlfriend is like, well, no, ew, gross, Girls would chase you on the playground and you run away from them.
Yeah.
Right.
Throw rocks at them. Then you get in trouble. So don't throw rocks at them.
Sounds like a story.
Yeah,
maybe.
No, that's fine.
Anyway.
I got one.
Maybe we all have one of those stories. But so then going a little farther forward, there were two stories that I always that come to mind in my discernment process. One, growing up in a small town, it was a small town, so Neilsville. That's where my father grew up, and he was born and raised there. He was an insurance salesman. He was a farmer, but then sold insurance as well. And my dad's kind of a gregarious, kind of outgoing person, and he knows everybody. So it was one Sunday morning, it was my older brother and I and my dad, and we had gone to early Mass on Sunday morning. And on the way home, we stopped at the grocery store to pick up some stuff. And sometimes, if we were good or maybe my dad was feeling generous, he would pick up donuts, right? Sunday donuts.
Classic.
And so we went to the grocery store. We got to pick out the donuts, my brother and I, and we went through the checkout, and we were kind of going back and forth. We were already trying to pick out which donuts we were going to have, kind of arguing over who was going to get what. And oftentimes, in grocery stores, they have like a bench near the entrance, right? Where people can sit with their groceries if they're going to get picked up or whatever it is. And there was a gentleman sitting on this bench, an older gentleman. And as we were walking out, my dad was walking first, and my brother and I were getting ready to, dig into these donuts as soon as we got to the vehicle. And the older gentleman stopped my dad, and he goes, "Excuse me, sir." My dad kind of stopped, and I like to think back and picture like us kind of bumping into him because we're like not even paying attention. He goes, "Have either of your two sons considered becoming priests?" I look at my brother, and he looks at me, and we're like, I don't know. We kind of look at my dad like, what is he talking about? And because he goes, "Well, ask them." We're like, "What do you mean ask?" Like, we're in our minds, we're kind of like freaking out like,
oh no.
Oh, well, we didn't have anything to say. And we just kind of look back at my dad. That's right. We're in the grocery store talking about donuts. What are we doing here?
Do you have insurance?
So we kind of look back at my dad, and then we look back at this guy, and he goes, "Well, you should." Now, I don't know if my brother remembers this story, but I didn't really remember it until much later. And as I kind of thought back, we got to the car, and we're like, that was weird. And we're ready to dive into these donuts. And my dad goes, "You guys know who that was?" And we kind of rolled our eyes like, "Oh, okay, Dad, you know everybody. Who was that?" And he goes, "No, I actually don't know who that was."
He disappeared.
I thought like you guys knew him, which is why he stopped us and asked that question.
It was George
So
McDonald.
to this day, I don't know, but to the gentleman who was sitting on that bench outside of the Neilsville IGA, So that was one story. The second story, I kind of alluded to it before. I tend to be a little competitive.
No.
I wasn't supposed to make you laugh. I'm a little competitive. But
I've never seen it.
Okay, so maybe it's an understatement. I'm a lot competitive.
There's 2 broken pool cues.
That wasn't me.
No,
Yeah,
Jack,
it's-
no.
A deflated basketball.
He hasn't. No, he's not.
Yeah,
He hasn't done that.
So
Yet.
give it time. But so I was able to be on a hockey team when I was in, we had a rec department league in the city of Neilsville. We had a handful of teams, and my brother and I and my dad, again, were part of that. My brother and I were on the team. My dad was one of the coaches for our team. And being competitive, right, we wanted to win. And we had if I'm being honest, we had a mediocre team. We were probably maybe 500 average. Like we won half our games and lost the other half. But there was a team in our league. So we were the Rangers. There was a team, the Red Wings. We borrowed these names from,
It's a hockey team.
hockey team. So the Red Wings were very good. They were undefeated. And so they were on the schedule to play. And so that day in school, I had a number of friends on that team. And of course, as it kind of goes, there was banter, relatively friendly banter, competitive banter.
Yeah.
My friends pretty much told me, like, don't even bother showing up. You're not going to win, so just stay home.
Yeah.
Of course, I said, okay, I'll stay home. No, of course, the competitive juices in me just began to boil, right? And I'm like, like we're gonna beat you. So that night, as we're going out to the car to drive to the hockey rink, I decided, in my 11-year-old brain, I thought, well, what do you do when you really, really want something? Well, you ask God for it, right? Mm. If it's something that you don't necessarily have complete control over, of course, you ask God for it. Mm. So don't be afraid to ask God for things. So as I'm walking out to the car, I said a little prayer. And I decided I was going to ask God to help us win that hockey game.
Smart.
Mm.
Of course. So this was my prayer at 11 years old. Dear God, please help us win this hockey game. And if we do, I'll become a priest.
There it is.
Amen.
It's a classic story.
Yeah.
So
That's just hagiography.
And then they lost.
So funny thing, right? So went to the hockey game.
14-0.
Just an absolute blowout. It was brutal. So never thought I was going to become a priest. No, actually, of course, we ended up winning. We were able to win. That's a story for another time. Shout out to Derek Gress.
Was he the ref?
No. Oh. I mean, that would be funny. No, he was our defense. He was our defenseman, which back in the day, they would have the no fear.
Oh, yeah.
He had a no fear helmet or sticker on the front of his helmet.
He sounds pretty afraid.
He was crazy, but like a good crazy.
It's biblical.
Yeah. So shout out to Derek Gress and my brother playing shutdown defense. I had a few goals. And we ended up winning. So moving forward, I didn't really think much of it. I'm like, we won. That's really what I wanted. And the next day in school was fantastic. I could just rub it in the faces of my friends that we won. They told me I shouldn't come, and we destroyed them.
Yep.
I mean,
now you
I think
be a
we.
priest.
I think yeah. I didn't say that either. But so then fast forward, this notion of being a priest was kind of there and continued to remain there. I went on a few retreats, but then we fast forward a little farther, getting into high school. And by the time you get into high school, you start thinking, well, what am I going to do, right? Mm-hmm. Where am I going to go to college? Am I going to go to college? What does the next step look like? Mm-hmm. And that's really kind of this time of year is when you're in the midst of that process. Maybe you've applied to colleges, maybe you've filled out scholarships, and you're really trying to make that decision of where you're going next. And I was in that situation, and I realized I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But this notion of the priesthood was still there. Mm-hmm. And so it was a little before this time of year, but it was back in November where I had a different parish priest at the time, Father Woody, and he invited me to reach out to our vocation director since that notion was there. And I continued to serve Mass, and it was kind of in the back of my mind. And so I did. I reached out. I received an application, worked with the vocation director, went through the application process. Get into late January, was accepted as a seminarian. So I was going to go to seminary. And one would think, great, you know what you're doing, you know what that next step is. There's some freedom and you can relax. Well, the exact opposite happened for me. I began to panic. And you had mentioned fear before. Because I'd go to Mass on Sunday mornings with my family, and the sweet ladies at the parish that I would meet afterwards would come up and say, "You're going to be a priest.
Yeah.
We're so happy for you."
Always.
And I was thinking to myself,
Bruises on your cheek.
Yeah.
whoa,
Yeah.
like, wait, like I didn't sign up for this. I don't know if I'm supposed to be a priest.
Yeah.
Right? I could see myself getting married and having a family. So their encouragement was almost a discouragement as I took it. It wasn't accomplishing what they were trying to do. Now, I would say for those who are listening, always encourage, right?
Yeah.
Don't stop encouraging young men to consider being a priest or a seminarian to, further their studies and hopefully make it to the priesthood. But for me at that point, there was a lot of fear that I experienced. And it almost led me not to go to seminary. But I had another opportunity where it was really a God moment where I was able to go on a mission trip. A gentleman in the parish had signed up to go, and the parish was, had kind of organized this mission trip to Uganda, Africa. And one of the gentlemen who was signed up, and it was just a few months before they went, he had a job change, and he no longer could go on this trip. And so they had this spot already kind of reserved, and he had raised money, and they had a ticket. And so one Sunday morning after Mass, he catches me as I was coming out of Mass, and he said, "Hey, have you ever wanted to go to Uganda?" And I was like, "Sure, maybe one day." And he goes, "How about in a couple months with the group?" And I was like, I didn't know what to say, right? I was like, well, I didn't sign up for it. I don't have the money really for it. I didn't plan to go. And he goes, well, and then he explained to me how his job had changed and he wanted me to take his spot. And the trip was mostly paid for. I just had to raise a couple $100s. He's like, oh, go home, talk to your parents, right? So this is my senior year in high school, nearing graduation. And so I'm like in this state of like, I don't know, discernment, confusion, fear, and everything was just kind of a mess. Ultimately, I said yes, right? And I ended up going on this trip. And oftentimes when you go on a mission trip, you go in with almost a savior complex, if I can name it as such, where I'm going to go help people. Look at me. Look at the good I'm going to do.
That's very real.
Which, of course, is the absolute wrong approach to it. But there was also a part of me that was not knowing what was going to happen. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I wasn't preparing for this for a very long time. So I went, and to make, again, that could be a whole nother encounter and story in and of itself. But the experience that I had there was extremely humbling. And I left thinking, having experienced incredible poverty, I left thinking, I want what they have, which doesn't seem initially to make sense because materially speaking, they had next to nothing. So it would seem kind of silly for me to say I want what they have. And maybe some people do have that call where they feel this really strong devotion to living a life of poverty, but that wasn't it. It was the joy that I encountered in the people that we got to know, that we are working side by side with, in the midst of not relying upon material things. They relied on God. And it was an element of trusting in God that allowed them to have joy. And so for me, it kind of experienced this internal turmoil and fear to be able to then say, I want that joy. I want the joy that they have. And that's when it struck me. Well, how do I get that joy? I need to trust. I need to trust in God. I need to trust that God has been active and at work in my life. And that probably looks like me going to seminary.
Yeah.
And so I went, and I kind of made another deal with God. At that point, that story had kind of come back up that I had already made one with God. And so I said, okay, God, I'll make another deal with you. Maybe not the most, intelligent idea. Just to realize that if you make a deal with God, he's going to hold you to your promise, or hold you to your deal. So I made another deal with God. I said, okay, God, I trust you that this is where you want me to be at this time. And so I'm going to give it my all until you tell me or you show me otherwise. And like you described, there was a sense of peace and freedom in that. knowing that God was going to take care of me. And now that wasn't to say that from that point forward, it was all sunshine and rainbows and everything was perfect and I didn't struggle at all. Well, no, of course not. You know, there was at one point in time in the seminary where I did almost leave. But luckily through prayer and with my spiritual director, he's like, no. You're getting way too far ahead of yourself. That's not what God intends, right? This isn't God telling you need to leave. Maybe you need to take this back to prayer and go back to trusting God a little bit more, which was great advice, right? Yeah. Really great sound advice. And fast forward to ordination, ordain a priest. And it was just, it's been, you know, an incredible experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything. So a lot more that fills in the gaps, but that in kind of a medium version of my story. So
nice.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, how about you?
Oh man. So you guys both talk about the getting the fear and then still going. So so I'm not a priest and today I'm not wearing black to match you guys.
Wow, yeah.
So I'm the oddball out. So so mine, I would say it probably started in the fourth grade too. I don't know why that's a common theme, but it was fourth grade. I was always picked for everything to be Jesus or God in any of the skits that Monsignor Hirsch would do with his music and whatnot. I was always Jesus or God. I want to be somebody cool like Peter. I want to cut off somebody's ear. I want to catch fish or do something. But I was always Jesus. And Jesus is always silent. And he's always just kind of like have his hands out or giving people hugs like in these skits and things like that. And that was me putting the broken things back together. And so at that point, I was like, man, I'm always Jesus. I always was picked to serve, like no matter what, like my family, you know, growing up in Cashton, rural, there isn't too many people out there. And so, you know, you go to mass, it was always my brother and I that were serving all the time. And I loved serving, especially St. Mary's. They used to have, they didn't have the bells. They used to have a little gavel.
Yeah, I saw that. The three.
Yeah, it's so fun. Yep,
Yeah,
you go up for the bread, and then you go down for the wine. Like it was my favorite thing to do. Sometimes you could go like middle down. It was fun, right? So I enjoyed serving. I love serving so much. And so it was in the back of my head that I thought I wanted to be a priest. And then I got to watch a movie of John Paul II for the first time, and I was like, dude, this guy skis. Like, okay, all right. So priests they're not lame. They can actually do things. And so that thought process kept going in. And then I had to write a career paper. And I was like, gosh, I don't know what I'm going to write about. Well, we got a new vocation director by the name of Father Eric Burns at the time. And if anybody knows Father Eric Burns, this guy has stories among stories, like for days. The guy rides a Harley, like, and sort of thing. So, you know, cowboy boots, the whole shebang. And so he came out to my house and he sat down for supper, and I was asking him all sorts of things. I was like, what does a priest make? And I think it was like, I don't know, I found it on the internet way back then, it was like 40 grand. And which I was like, whoa. So much money. You can do so many things. You can buy so many video games with that money. Oh man. So I was like, yeah. And Father Burns made the priesthood really attractive to me. Because again, he was a normal, like strong guy, like really good, like male figure. And so I thought, hey, this is great. And he's a great cook, right? On top of it, to boot. And so we would have youth groups, and he would have us over to the rectory, and we'd have our food, and we'd talk about saints. And I was like, all right, this priesthood life isn't too bad. And then we got Monsignor Hirsch. He came in there, and like he was also a phenomenal like vocation director. He was my pastor growing up, but then he became a vocation director, so he knew me really well. So he was constantly asking me the question like, hey, when are you going to join? And we had the high school seminary back then too, here at the diocese. And so I thought, okay, I went to the Dare to Follow days growing up all the time. I met so many awesome priests, and now I get to serve alongside with, in my role in vocations. Like I get to talk to them, and I'm like, you had a huge impact in my life. Father Patashik, I remember him being at Dare to Follow and like getting an ice cream cone to soft serve and just sitting down and talking with him, Father Close, like all these priests, like it had such a huge impact in my life. And so Monsignor Hirsch was constantly asking me the question. Well, then I finally was like, all right, I'll do it. Right. And this time, Father Sam Martin was also running the high school seminary here. And I knew him. He was my parish priest growing up. So I was like, all right, I'll jump in. I was all signed up for Aquinas. I had all my classes picked out. And Father Sam was so happy that I was going to be there. but there was still something in me that was like, I don't know. Right. It was a big jump. And the reason why I decided to not go that year is because it was my high school principal, Andre Casabone, who told me, like, and again, this isn't a shot at Aquinas, but I was running away from my issues at home. I thought Aquinas was going to be the Catholic Disneyland. I thought the high school seminary was going to be the thing that I could run away from all my problems. And that was going to be like a haven for me. And like, that was going to be my protection. And he said, he's like, it's not a Catholic Disneyland. I just want to let you know that. And those words have stuck with me ever since. And it was at that point I said, you know what? You're right. You're right. And so I pulled out of the high school seminary at that time. And thank God I did, because then my dad got a new job. He moved to Holman my senior year of high school and made a lot of new friends there. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity had I gone in. Mm-hmm. And so the next summer I was at Steubenville, and I was doing all the retreats, the Crosswoods, the Steubenvilles, etc. And I was really wrestling with this call of where I was called to in my life. I had the call to the priesthood back on my heart again. And we're in adoration. And I just was like, man, God, what do you want me to do? Right. And I had this almost audible call of, I want you to be a father. And so at that point, I'm thinking, I'm at a Steubenville. Cool. I'm going to be a priest. So I text Monsignor Hirsch. Monsignor, I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to join the seminary. And he's like, yes, it's been 12 years.
Got it.
He's got the paperwork.
He's already had it. He forged my signature. He's like, we've had this for a long time. And so he was so excited for me to be able to join. However, at that point he goes, but I want you to join the next year. Mm-hmm. Right? It's the gung-ho-ness. He knew something at that time. He's like, I want you to be able to join next year. I was like, okay. So I waited. I went up to St. Thomas that fall, or that spring, the winter semester, spring semester. And because I wanted to get to know the university. I was going to go to St. John Vianney. So I was just in the normal dorms at the time, was on the track team. And it was my buddy, my best friend through high school. I came back to visit him, and he's like, dude, what are you doing? I was like, I'm, discerning priesthood. And, this is not, I'm just telling people, this is not the best discernment tactic out there, but you listen to other people around you, and he goes, dude, you like girls too much. And I'm like, you're kind of right. Like I do like girls. But what he was trying to say in his very, college way of saying it was, you are good at relationships. Like that's your thing. Like you're going to be a good husband. You're going to be a good father. Like he's seen me in my dating relationships, and he knew like that's where I was called. And so him saying that to me, like, yeah, it was very offhanded, but I thought about that. I was like, yeah, you're kind of right. And so when I went back up to St. Thomas on the track team, I met like the girls that were there for J term, hit it off with them, became really good friends with them, since there was really nobody else at campus over J term, and I knew nobody else up in the cities. Coming from little tiny Cashton, going to the cities, holy cow, that was a change, right? It's like the opposite
Country
of you going from Jersey to here. Yeah, it's very different. And so I got to be close with them. And after the first track meet, my mom saw me talking with one of the girls, and she called me the next day. I remember I was in the stairwell in my dorm, and she goes, "Hey, you're going to marry that girl." I was like, "Mom." Like classic,
stop, Mom.
Like, Mom,
Classic mom.
Mom, no, stop! I don't even like her. She's like, you were flirting with her. I was like,
she's
no.
got cooties.
I was like, no, Mom, no, Mom, I'm here to discern the priesthood. And she's like, no, okay.
Yeah.
So 3 weeks later, Jen and I started dating because, again, Mom knows things about
Mother's
everything.
intuition.
She knows, right? And I felt that peace. So, like, I knew God was calling me. He just wanted me to say yes. That's all he wanted me to say. Like, as I can look back in retrospect, God was calling me just to say yes to him. So when he said, I'm calling you to be a father, I thought priest, because that's what I was set on at the time. But he's like, no, I want you to discern that priest or that fatherhood so that I can show you what fatherhood you're called to. Right. And what a crazy adventure it's been now that we have, 4 kids. It's like, and same thing with what you guys are saying is it's a crazy adventure. So the fear that was there for me, like, it didn't necessarily keep me out. It just kept me hesitant in a way that God was waiting for me to be able to be patient with him to finally give him the yes at the right time. Right. And so, been blessed in the marriage ever since, sort of thing. But yeah, same thing with engagement. Like, it's still there. I see my friends that are in the seminary and I'm like, am I called to the seminary or not? But I was constantly reassured time and time again, God saying no. And now that I have the graces of marriage, like, yeah, it's great. And I still get to hang out with a bunch of priests and help seminarians. God has a weird way of working that he brought me back to this job. He's like, yeah, you're the guy that ran a bunch of times, but guess what? You're here now.
Yeah.
Got him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got him. So, yeah. I was also, last thing, right? Don't bring your girlfriend to the seminary to visit.
Don't do that.
Yeah, I did that too. I brought her there and I was like, you know what I'm doing? And she's like, yeah, I just came to visit the college. Yeah, the priest at the time, he just goes, you realize this is a seminary, right? Yes, Father, I know that's a seminary. Does she know it's a seminary? It's like, yes, right? It was very awkward when we broke up 2 weeks later, sort of thing. So, right, maybe the bishop brought me on to say, like, don't discern like this guy, this chump, sort of thing. But hey, you know what? It all worked out in the end. God was able to make it work.
That's awesome.
So, the one thing that I saw that was in common with all of our stories, right? We talked about fear, but then there was a sense of peace that is there too. And one of the things that I kind of wanted to do in like previous podcasts was to talk about this. We have you guys read a lot of things here in the formation program. And one of the books that I think is profound and being able to help people in discernment, because that's where we're kind of going with this, is what are my next steps, right? How do I know where God is calling me? Father Jacques Philippe, he wrote a book, and he's a pretty popular guy. There's lots of books that are out there. You have a glass with a breadstick in it, not the book. You can try to read it. But this book, Searching for and Maintaining Peace, is, I would say, it is almost a necessary book for people to read that are in a process of discerning where God is calling you. Right. What's your experience, Andrew? Like, in reading this book, you're almost finished with it now for the classes. But any thoughts out there of like how this has impacted you in your discernment?
Yeah, that idea of reading through that God is His providence and how you're going to touch souls is going to be, and how that capacity of peacefulness you have in your soul. That really struck me, because I see it with myself. When I'm agitated, when I'm most fearful, I'm not making the best decisions. I'm not at my best, and you can hide it well. I mean, you can do your best, but it's you're not going to go to that full capacity of your vocation. Like, what makes your vocation joyful? Because what makes it so joyful is God gives these gifts. Like, it's you don't even have to necessarily do anything. It's like a gift. Like, what did I do to deserve this? Like, nothing. I want to give this to you. And the vocation does that, especially when you're at peace, you're following the Lord. I've seen that all this year. Working at Viterbo has been a big example. These amazing people I've met, how I've gotten people telling me things that they trust me, like sitting there, and I get to be like an older brother to them. And I'm not even that much older. I'm a couple of years older than them. And just seeing the love and the care God shows just working through me. And I leave there and I'm thinking, that's amazing. Like that, we talk about like that joy you felt leaving Africa. I had that feeling just in the apostolics and this vocation where I'm at that most peace, that capacity to help souls. That was just astounding to me to read that. And I think that I always go back to that one quote I love the little quotes in there too. With Saint Seraphim in there. I think it might have been around page 8. If you have the book there, I love. What was the quote on there? Because I really, that struck me when I first was reading the beginning of the book.
All right, here, I'll pass you the book because you know where it would be.
It is on page 8, in fact.
Yeah, page 8.
Look at that.
Top left corner. That's it. This is so funny.
Look
God's
this guy
providence.
in his memory.
It's usually not that good. Acquire interior peace, and a multitude will find its salvation through you, said Saint Seraphim of Sarav, I believe. That's it. That really just struck me when I'm reading through this book, is if you can acquire this interior peace through God's help and working through we've also talked about levels of the heart, things that can hold you back. And there's not everything, there spiritual things do come in, but also too, there's some, physical things that affect you. And that adds to this journey of finding that peace. But yeah, that really hit me a lot. God working through me at the best when I have my peace, especially in my vocation. I think he even talks about it later here. It's something else. I really found that.
I mean, it's important, especially like as you say there, right? You bring up that quote from Saint Seraphim. Your vocation is meant not necessarily for yourself. You will find joy, right, within it, but it is meant at service of others.
Yeah.
And when we look at the saints, right, we had our recent podcast on the saints, but the thing that Father said that they all have in common is this love for Jesus, right? And for that, what we see is this love for Jesus allows them to be able to have this sense of peace. Why are people coming to them? Why do people look to their examples? Because they have this order, this trust in what Christ is doing for them and their lives, that they can freely go out to others and be able to proclaim who he is, and to trust that God is going to take care of them in that. And for our discernment, the one thing that I love about this book is something that I think a lot of Catholics take for granted is we are so hard on ourselves if we're not perfect. We're so hard on ourselves when it comes to discerning and vocation. I need to know exactly what God is calling me to, and I need to know the exact route of how that's going to look, and I need to know all the steps around the way. And if I mess up on one of those steps, I'm never going to be happy, right? And as you can clearly hear from our three stories, right, there's a small swath of it, but our three stories, none of us did it perfectly. Like, none of us did it perfectly. We all either were hesitant or ran at one point away from what God was calling us to. And yet he still was calling us back, not pulling us, not pushing us, but it was a call, right? And how do you hear the call? He brings it up in here he brings up the analogy of like the lake, right?
I love that one.
And the agitation that's there, you aren't able to see it clearly. But for us to be able to hear his call, there has to be a sense of peace within the heart. And that was the thing that I was feeling when going into high school seminary. There was just something that was off inside of me. Yes, I was called to desire it. I love looking at the community. I love the structure of it. But there was still something that says, yeah, but not right now. Right? That's not what you're called to right now. So I think we need to be a little easier. And that's, again, this book, he tells yourself, you're not perfect. Because if you are perfect, you don't need God. And if you don't need God, like, that's an issue, right?
Yeah. It's funny you talked about that, because like that's a big thing about this year I've been learning. Maybe a lot of people know it, but not everything's black and white. Like, especially when it comes to service, like, it's very gray. And if you're looking for black and white, you're not going to find that. I always joke, like, most of us are not going to get knocked off the horse like Paul, and Jesus is going to just speak to you like right directly. It's going to be gray, and that's scary. Like, that scares me. I don't like the gray. It's uncomfortable. But that's where I've heard people say it. That's where Jesus is. Jesus is in the gray. He's not going to be, of course we have our black and white, our commandments and the church teaching.
Your
yes.
clothes.
Yeah.
Conveniently.
Yeah. But he's in that gray. So I also want to put that out there. Anyone discerning, don't be afraid of the gray when something's uncertain. That does not, don't fall in that fear. It's in that peace, because you're just going to rattle the water. You're not going to find that clarity. So I just want to talk about that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think for me, I would say that this book is the one that I give the most. Right? I was at one point listening to a podcast, and they said, "What is the most recommended book, or the book that you give others the most?" Yeah. And I think that's a kind of a testament to something that has, impacted you the greatest. And I would say it's this book. I would buy a case of them, and I give them to people, because I think, I've given retreats on this book. I gave a week-long retreat on this book, and if you look through here, it's just like every single page has like notes and underlines and everything else. And it's just it looks.
I was going to say, there's more underlined in that book than there isn't.
Yeah. At some point, it's just like, why did you highlight everything? Well, I mean, because I've gone through it, and this is a book that, like, you can even look on the edges here where it's discolored from how many times I've gone through it.
Yeah, it's okay. My dog ate mine.
So-
You really didn't
Yeah.
feel any peace.
But,
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things with this is, if we are authentically trying to do the will of God, which ultimately is discernment, if we are truly seeking to do His will, right, there's going to have to be, it's not done in fear. Again, we shared that. It's not going to be done in, kind of white knuckling something where we decide that we're going to do this and we're going to stubbornly hang on because this is what we want. No, it's a surrendering. It's a letting go. It's a committing ourselves, trusting in God. And when we do that, there's going to naturally be peace there, right? Peace is, it's a fruit of the Holy Spirit, right? One of the fruits of the Holy Spirit. So where the Holy Spirit is present, there will be peace, right? And when we are connected, united to the Holy Spirit, we are going to be able to go where we're meant to go. We're going to be able to move as we're called to move. We're going to be able to love more deeply, right? Both God and other people, as we were just talking about. And that's really, so the title of this book, Searching for and Maintaining Peace, right? Where do we find it? It's we find it under a rock someplace where we have to go and search for it, or do we just have to look inwardly? Do we have to look for Jesus, and we're going to find it there, in being with Christ? And this, one of the things that I really appreciate with Father Philippe is how he really lays it out very simply, right? It's not a lot of really deep, flowery, theological language that you have to read, over and over again just to try to understand it. But it's accessible, right? And this book really kind of gives a great outline of challenges that you face and what are some obstacles to peace, right? What are things in your life that are preventing you from truly achieving this peace that you desire? What are ways in which when you have peace, how do you remain there? And it's just, I think it's a great little, it's very thin, which is another reason why I like it. Very simple and straightforward. But it's, if people are struggling or looking for something, in their discernment process, maybe just you already have your vocation. You're in your vocation right now. If you're looking for and you find that you're uneasy, you're kind of anxious or worried or fearful, or there's just this unrest, right? I would highly recommend this book.
Yeah.
So,
No, I love that stuff because especially in those times of vocation, like right now, a lot of the guys in the house, we're coming to the end of our year and we're going into that it's always the next stage. I remember my vocation director telling me that. It was a lot of wisdom he was shedding light on, where it seems, I guess it is a human condition when we go on to that next stage, like this is big, like it's one thing coming here that it is scary, but like now I'm looking at and going, and other guys are looking at going to the college seminary or the major seminary. It's like, there's a lot of tension there. There's a lot of, it's like that finding and maintaining peace where it's important when it's like getting this book at a time when you're making that, and even I'm sure when you're discerning dating or marriage, like there's that next big moment, and that brings a lot of disturbance. That brings a lot of, because there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of fear. So yeah, I think that's a great timing to look into this book also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's our book recommendation. Down by the River, stamped and approved. Father Jacques Philippe, Searching for and Maintaining Peace.
he also has a lot of other books too, which I would highly recommend. His
I gotta
works
look that
are
out.
incredible. So if you get a
Check it
chance to
out.
start browsing his library,
Amazon or whether fine books are sold.
that's right.
So,
Yeah.
fantastic. But so speaking of next steps, just a little plug for anybody listening. If you know any young men that are discerning between the grades of 7 through 10, we have Dare to Follow Days going to be hosted here at Mater Redemptoris, June 17th through the 19th. They get to stay here in the house or over at the House of Formation, depending on the number of kids that we get. We have games, we have talks, we have time for prayer, just to really help discern. Because again, you heard all of our stories started at a young age. And so it's important to be able, it's not to show that the priesthood, one, is a normal call, Like, it is a normal thing to be able to be called to the priesthood, and to kind of humanize what the priesthood looks a little bit. We have the seminarians, we have some of our propedeutic guys, we have a number of priests that are here. It was integral in my discernment process, and so we are hoping to have you there. You can find the registration on the diocesan website, and it should be coming out in your bulletins, or you should be able to find it at your parish. If not, ask your parish priest, and he can get you in contact with us. But again, if you got questions on discernment, feel free, shoot Father Nate an email. You can find his stuff on the diocesan website. Set up a meeting. He's always looking, as vocation director, to be able to do those type of things. If I didn't just, put your name out there for everybody.
Well, I mean, it's already out there, which is a good thing, right? And I think a big part of it too is, as we look at, discernment and what's the next step, as you were talking about, Andrew, and just, how do we do this? Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask somebody that you trust, whether it's a good friend who can maybe give you a little tidbit of wisdom.
True.
And tell you like, hey, snap out of it, or hey, what are you doing? Who's going to be authentic with you, but also looking at, people like, for example, priests, to be able to ask them questions, not even just vocation director, but like your pastor, your home parish. Talk to them. Talk to people that you trust are going to give you authentic, kind of words of wisdom and point you in the right direction. Not to tell you what you're supposed to do or not, but really lead you in the path to say, I want to do what God wants me to do. Right? And that's a huge thing, right? What is it that you want me to do is one thing. And to be able to listen and to hear him answer, which he will, and you're able to hear that more clearly when you have peace in the silence. Spending time in prayer is essential, right? There's nothing that can replace that. And when you talk about having a relationship with the Lord, right? In order to trust somebody, you have to have a relationship. And in order to have a relationship, you're willing to have that interaction, the communication, which is essential in any relationship. And so that's essential with God too. And then to realize that God is inviting. He's not pushing. He's not forcing. He never does, because of his love for you. And that he simply wants you to respond, as you mentioned, that yes. Are you willing to do what I desire you to do? Are you willing to follow me? That classic, dare to follow. Do you have the courage to follow in the footsteps of Jesus and go where he is inviting you to go? Yeah, you may not know 100%. There may not be certainty, but to be able to take that step in that right direction and to do something about that rather than just kind of sit and wait and hopefully somehow magically that'll all work itself out. Well, no, there will be a time where if you're feeling this tug on your heart, the important next step is to do something, to respond, to share that with somebody that can help guide you, to reach out to your parish priest, to reach out to me, to us, and in the vocation office to be able to, take action, right? And move. So that, again, it's this time of year where things are changing, new growth is happening, and that happens within our hearts too, and sometimes it's those natural moments that lead to the more supernatural. So that's discernment. We got to keep working at it.
Yeah.
Any final words from Mr. Vardabedian?
That's Vardabedian.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
I'll get it right one of these days.
Yeah. Oh no, I just have to say that I remember a spiritual director telling me, we were talking, this is when I was in my discernment. I'm still in discernment, but this is before I applied for seminary, or that in between time. He talked about the Blessed Mother, how she pondered these things in her heart. I remember he using that sentence. I remember sometimes I'm an anxious guy, and I remember I was like going off, and he just stopped me. He says, Mary pondered these things in her heart. And he said it in such calm and peacefulness, and just alluding to that the Blessed Mother, she had her sorrows, of course, and that there's going to be that pain, but she had this just tranquility within her to follow, and we know she was able to follow God's will perfectly, and you had to see that peacefulness was an integral part to it. She took everything in and she pondered it. Things that people would tell her. I also want to end with that is, I'm a firm believer. You'll hear a lot, like it just as that gentleman said to you, of like, have you ever thought about being a priest? Or I think a lot of people listen to what people say. That's a huge thing. That was a big thing for me also. Even when I stepped away, there were still people saying like, oh, you would make a good priest. And that would break my heart, because I'm like, yeah, I wanted to, but I'm too afraid. And God's just trying to tell you what he wants, these gifts he wants to bestow on you. He doesn't want to say order you around. He has these gifts to give to you. And the vocation is exactly that. So I'm just, I have to look at the Blessed Mother also, ask for intercession and help. Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this
Thank you.
most
Thank you.
recent episode
I'll
of
take
Down
this.
by the River. We thank you for your breadsticks and for
well, we
your-
haven't established that they're breadsticks, but
we don't know necessarily
we don't know what they are.
So
But
Make sure you take them with you when you go.
yeah,
this might be the last podcast. So if you don't hear or
Yes.
see us anymore, it was his fault.
Breadsticks, so.
yeah. So just take some Imodium, you'll be fine. You'll be all good.
Perfect. But
This has been presented by Imodium. No, it has not.
we'll see you next time.
Okay,
God bless.
bye bye. God bless you.